When you hear Domina, you're probably not thinking about a game, and on the scale from weird to bad game title choices, it is slightly above anxiety. Man, Google's search engine is not prepared for this kind of thing. Fortunately, Domina just means lady in Latin, and I think this is the actual reference, but I can already see how YouTube is going to suppress this video, so let's move on. You are the owner of a gladiator school or ludus, and your predecessor left you with almost nothing. Your job is to build the ludus up and win the championship that occurs after 365 days or a whole year. The character you're playing is always a woman, therefore the name Domina, because a female that owns a gladiator school is actually called Ludus Magna or Magnum, so it can be a reference to that. Either way, I think Domina just sounds better, and we should keep at that. Now, shall we have a look at the most important part of any game? The menu. This menu pleases my eyes. Well, at first. Every essential options is here. A new game, endless game, options, feedback, soundtrack, credits, and a quit button. Perfection. Loading the game is also very interesting because after saving, a new button will appear besides the start mode buttons that allows you to load your last save. I never saw this before. Most of the times there's a load option, but I think I like this more. The options menu is, well, cluttered. I think it's okay, but there's just too much here. You have key bindings, audio configurations, and game options in one screen. Putting those options in submenus would make the whole thing cleaner. We don't see key bindings often in indie games, and I have to give kudos to the dev here, even though I will be perfectly fine with the default key bindings. Audio configuration looks pretty good too, and the fact that you can actually change music, effects, crowd, and weapons individually just makes it perfect. Game options are almost perfect because there's one thing that seems to always be missing in indie games, and that is window resolution. You can change between full screen and windowed mode, but that's it. My eyes are not pleased anymore. Sizing or resolution is one of my personal pet peeves. You can also connect to Twitch channel, which is pretty cool. I don't use it, but I think it's a good way to connect with your community. And here is where we're going to leave the menu and move on to the gameplay. As soon as you start the game, you will be greeted by the tutorial and a little bit of story. You can choose to skip the tutorial, but should you choose to follow the tutorial, you will be slowly introduced to the game mechanics. First, the market. Here you can buy and sell water, food, and wine, as well as send your gladiators into pit fights. We will talk about pit fights later. You can also hire employees, which I will also cover later. Next up is the Dottore. The Dottore is a train and upgrade hub for your gladiators. You can give him the order to train your gladiators automatically. If you don't, you have to click on your gladiators individually for them to start training. So you should command the Dottore to train your gladiators for you, but if you want to play a little clicker game, just don't do it, I guess. Next is the magistrate, from which you can buy slaves, carriages, and horses. Those will be important later on. We can also suggest gladiator patronage, which will cover the gladiator's day-to-day cost, but only if you are in favor with the magistrate. Let me explain really quickly how favor works. You can send a magistrate wine and get him drunk, or arrange an exhibition match which will grant you favor, and if he is content, he will accept the gladiator patronage. The favor mechanic works for the legate the same, and the legate is pretty much the same as the magistrate, but instead of buying slaves, you can buy experienced gladiators from him. On the left side of the screen there is the map of games, which will show you regional championships. You have to win 3 of them to get a real ending, but you have 365 days, so it shouldn't be a big deal. You might not do it on your first run, especially on pro gamer difficulty, but it is doable. Of course, you have to keep buying at least food and water, because if you run out of food and water, well, your gladiators will start rebelling, and you will probably die out of hunger. If you want to offload some costs, I would recommend keeping the magistrate and the legate happy, but they aren't necessary. They don't really affect the game that much. You can get through the game without even touching them, except on higher difficulties. I think now it's a good time to talk about employees. We have a wide range of employees that range from medics to smiths and something that I can only describe as a witch. I'm not going to explain what every single employee does, but I'm going to highlight and explain 3 employees that I enjoyed using the most. First, we have the farmer, which means artisan or craftsman, but I would say it is basically the smith. He can auto upgrade the gladiator's gear and repair it too. He costs 75 coins and 1 water and food per day. You should get him or her, I can't really tell, because they also make your gear cheaper. Second, we have the architect, which I think is self-explanatory and it will make your life easier because the architect can give you Ludus training equipment, which will boost your training speed and various other useful buildings, like a well, which will produce water. Third, we have the medicus, which is the med of the team, and will allow gladiators to heal even during training, since otherwise you have to pay for the healing process, which will take forever and will stop your gladiators from training. And that is a bad thing, because your gladiators should always be training and never stop. Never. There are also the upgraded versions of these units called Emeritus, which means retired or veteran. They open up a few more options and provide a few more upgrades for your Ludus. The Architect, for example, can give you more employee space. The Medicus Emeritus can give you faster and better healing, as well as multi-healing for your gladiators. The Farb Emeritus provides you with more upgrade options for your gladiators, weapons, and armors. Since we're talking about gladiators a lot, let's move on to the part of the game that you will be spending the most amount of time. Training, equipping, taking care of your gladiators, and sending them into brutal battles. You have several different ways to train your gladiators. One option is of course to train your gladiators at your Ludus, which you will be doing all the time anyways. You can do that manually by left-clicking on your gladiators or enable your Doctore to do it for you, but I already mentioned that. I would advise to just leave it to the Doctore, because clicking on your gladiators is not fun. But people also enjoy clicker games, so I guess for those people it would be fun? I don't know. You can also change what attribute your gladiators should focus on by left-clicking them and adjusting the sliders on the left side of the gladiator's info card. I never really focus on those things because I don't see a big difference. There's a strategy for the hardest difficulty that requires you to change one small thing. Other than that, I leave that thing alone. It can help out to adjust those sliders, I just don't do it. Not the game's fault, it's just me, I really just don't use it. I will link the strategy in the description for the hardest difficulty, since it helped me a lot on higher difficulties and it could help you too. Since we are in the gladiators menu already, let's talk about equipment. First, you have to choose which type of gladiator you want, but to be able to choose which gladiator you want, you have to unlock it from the Doctore first. So even though you have a choice, you need to work for that choice. I don't really like this system. I understand that it's basically gating off content and give you something to work towards, but you can also buy a gladiator from the legate, which already has upgraded equipment and can be from a different class, so it's kind of hit and miss. Makes sense, but I just simply don't like it. Anyways, after picking up your gladiator's class, you can start upgrading their equipment by hovering over the part you want to upgrade and right-clicking it. You can also downgrade equipment, but I don't know why they would like to do that. I didn't use that feature ever, except by accident, so but just forget about that. Upgrading, of course, costs money, and money is the perfect segue to talk about the battles, the second way to train your gladiators. We have championship battles, pit fights, exhibition matches, and normal battles, which will happen after a certain amount of days. The further you get into the year, the longer the time period between those battles will be. Usually battles are played out automatically, and you can stack the odds in your favor by upgrading training and keeping your gladiators happy, but you can also fight yourself by buying the mind control upgrade from the Doctore. Mind control isn't essential, in fact you can play through the whole game without even touching this part of the game, but I personally enjoy it and I would recommend to at least try it out. Let's move from battle type to battle type, starting with normal battles. Like I mentioned before, after a certain amount of days indicated on the top right corner of the screen, an event will trigger. A screen will indicate which type of fight you will be facing. These fights can range from 1 versus 1 to many versus many, and everything in between, and sometimes a line comes around. Pick your fighter or fighters depending on the battle specification, and if you unlock the mind control feature, you can also decide if you want to control one of your fighters from the very beginning of the battle. Or you can just press tab to take control during the fight and also change gladiators you are controlling. If you have the mind control power, I would advise to take control sometimes, because the AI will just lose its cool sometimes and make some weird choices. After successfully annihilating the opponent with your glorious gladiators, the game will reward you with money, resources, experience for your gladiators, and sometimes more slaves or upgraded gladiators. The experience is not guaranteed on higher difficulties though. The championship fights work pretty much the same as the battles, except that championships are pretty much fixed. Again, depending on the difficulty, some things might change, like how strong the enemy is, how big his HP pool is, or how strong he hits. Pit fights are the same as normal battles, but they are illegal and in a pit. I like them anyways. They don't do anything different, really, but they have this feeling about them. Maybe it is how it looks, because there's a filter on top of the screen when you go into pit fights. Maybe the music, because the music is a little bit muffled and different. Or just the idea that even though you're literally holding slaves, that there is something even more illegal. Lastly, we have the exhibition matches. These are private matches for the legate or the magistrate, like I mentioned before, and they will not reward you with a lot of money. Instead, they will reward you with favor, which will unlock the possibility to suggest gladiator patronage from those guys, but I already covered favors in the beginning. With all that, I think we covered the active phase of the game. And so, what is left? There are a few things more I want to talk about. They are not essential to the game, and they don't make or break the game. One thing I will not touch is the cards system. After a fight, you can earn cards, or called, I think, Jupiter's Blessing, and you can equip that on your gladiators and employees, as well as the legate. And in endless mode, you can also equip Jupiter's Blessing on your own Domina. But I will not talk about it, and I will not talk about the endless mode. I think those are things that aren't essential to the game. Even though I enjoy endless mode, it will not sell the game. What will sell the game is the management part of it. That's why I presented it that way. But I will cover a few more things, one of those being events. Sometimes a message will pop up and tell you something like you stubbed your toes and your sandwich fell on the ground. The world can be a cruel place sometimes. It will do nothing. Just simply tell you that message and that's it. Or it could be something much more interesting, like the magistrate. You met the magistrate and he's buying shoes on your cousin's shoe shop, and you can decide to make a deal with him. This will reward you with money, favor, or nothing, depending on what you decide to do. Those events don't have a huge effect on your game, and I guess this is a good thing because you don't have any control over which event will be triggered. From now on, I will talk about stuff that you might not even encounter or not even use, since it's more of a good addition than essential gameplay, so if you're not interested in that, this part is going to suck. Let's talk about lions, behemoths, and races. Like I mentioned before, fighting battles will reward you with slaves and gladiators. And on rare occasions, it can happen that you acquire a lion. You can trade them, only heal them, and send them to battle. They are strong foes, but they are actually very weak. They die really quickly. It's fun to play them if you have the mind control power, and chew through some gladiators, but they are not really useful. Behemoths, as far as I know, can only be acquired from championship fights against behemoths. Those warriors are practically giant monsters that, pretty much like the lions, can only be healed and sent to battle. They can do one cool thing though, which is pick up a warrior and throw them and damaging them in that process. It's a cool addition, but doesn't really change the gameplay that much. They are also very weak, pretty much like the lions, even though they are strong as foes. Lastly, we have the races. Like behemoths and lions, you can be rewarded horses and carriages after battles. Both can be upgraded, healed, and repaired, and the horses can also be trained. You don't need to rely on luck for those NPCs because the magistrate also sells horses and carriages. Anyways, after getting those guys and maybe upgrading them, you can send one of your gladiators to a race which will reward you with money and resources. You can control the gladiators in those races too if you have the mind control power. The control feels a little bit uncomfortable though, so just let the AI take care of it. It is also possible to win the race by just killing everyone too. I just wanted to let you know that you can do that. If you do, I won't judge. Now that we talked about the metagame and the active part of the game, I would like to talk about something that you might not even notice when playing. During the game, you are constantly juggling the balance of buying resources, hiring employees, training your gladiators, upgrading their equipment, and maybe buying in new ones. If one of your gladiators dies, you will be annoyed that you lost it and then proceed to build a new one. On the highest difficulty, you might even send unequipped and untrained gladiator to die, just to improve your chance to win next time. Even though you can take control of your gladiators, you are not dumb. Even the skill you have to unlock to be able to control your gladiators is called mind control. This is not a critique of the game or the dev. It is more of an observation that I made during my 60 plus hours of playtime. If you haven't noticed yet, I have been switching from the word slave and gladiators. I mostly use the word gladiator, but if you take a closer look, it doesn't really matter which word I use. They are all slaves, assets, resources, well, at least for your Domina. It's kind of fucked up to be honest. There's even an option to kill your gladiators, which is even worse than owning slaves, but I guess you send them into battles accepting them to die, so it's pretty much all fucked up. This is not the game's fault though, nor is it the dev's fault. It just made me sad. It made me realize that I was having fun with something that is basically evil, but then I proceed to play it anyways. Does this make me evil? I would like to know what you think. Am I overreacting here? Should I take the game less serious? Should I take it more serious? I really don't know. One thing I know for sure, if there is a Domina 2, I would like the option to revolt against the Roman Empire. You know, since Spartacus was one of the inspirations for the game, I think that would be a great idea. And yes, Spartacus was one of the inspirations for the game. The developer confirmed it when I interviewed him. On the other hand, there is also the possibility to set your gladiators free, so that's a good thing, I guess. And to win and have the good ending, you have to free a lot of high-level gladiators. So, yeah, I still have no idea what I should think about it. Well, now that I brought the mood down, would I recommend the game? Yes, maybe. I think it comes down to if you enjoy management games. It is enjoyable to have a full ludus and see your gladiators train, keep managing your stuff, and see their attributes go up. Weirdly enough, it reminds me of a clicker game. The fights themselves are beautiful to look at, especially with its very nice pixel art and nice pixel bud also, as well as the possibility to see limbs being chopped off. I know, cruel, but it just looks cool. Taking control of your gladiators in battle can also be very fun, except in 15 versus 15 battles. I would say try it out. Have a look at it, maybe watch someone else play it, then decide for yourself. In the end, it is your decision anyways. And one last thing. the interview. I was happy when bignic, the developer, responded to my questions. Unfortunately, we couldn't talk, but that is okay. I posted the full interview in the Steam forums like always. If you are interested in those things, I will link it in the description. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you did, comment what indie games that didn't receive much cover and you want me to have a look at, and share this with people that might enjoy this type of game. Have a nice day, take care of yourselves, and we will see each other next time.